This segment of In the Groove is proudly supported by the William G. McGowan Charitable Fund.
Hello, friends of the Artist Outreach. I'm Joseph Vincelli, the Chief Executive and your host of In the Groove. Now, many of you know that we support education and serve in many different ways through the arts. And I said this before and I'll say it again. We're not teaching kids how to play the saxophone. They have a music teacher. What we're trying to do is teach them various ways of education, academics, culinary arts, nutrition. And the purpose is to help them be engaged through the art form itself, to make it more exciting, to make it more engaging and interesting. And today we have a real treat. One of our artists, a chef here in Dallas-Fort Worth, is going to make a couple of dishes for us. And the purpose is because he wants to give you an opportunity to learn more about nutrition. Because one of the reasons why we have a nutrition program is we believe that the brain works better when the gut is doing better. So a lot of the food obviously goes to our stomach and then it gets processed. But it's during that processing that we want the nutrients to go into their bloodstream and right into our brain. That makes a better thinker, makes a better student, and makes a better artist. So we do this so that the kids will understand, and the adults that we perform this for, so that they'll understand things differently. And we perform this program both in Dallas-Fort Worth as well as Kansas City. So I have today Chef Blake Pt1, and I always call him Chef Blake or Chef. Chef is one of our regular staff members here in Dallas-Fort Worth and performs these programs. And so he's going to make a couple of different dishes for us. And before we get to that, Chef, what I'd like to kind of have you explain is a little bit, because first of all, you're very passionate as a teacher, which is great to see. But what got you to be so excited about this type of programming?
Well, so my name is Blake Pt1. I'm an unusual person in a lot of different ways. I do a lot of different things, but I've cooked since I was a young kid and never had any knowledge of what healthy eating, healthy food was. Yeah. Like a lot of people, I'm sure, felt kind of bad every day just because my choices and not even realizing that I was feeling bad.
Right.
Somewhere around 4 years ago, after struggling with my weight basically my whole life, I got up to 365 pounds or so. I don't know how big I got because my scale maxed out at 365 pounds, so I know I got that big.
Right.
And that's even with somebody who loves to cook and was cooking almost all my own foods, which is a lot easier to control kind of the calories you take in and things like that. And I just realized it was time to make a change.
Yeah, a lot of people know me obviously from the bio that you watch. You know me as a musician, but actually, I grew up in an Italian-American family, and I was cooking at the age of 5.
Mm-hmm.
My mom.
I love to eat.
My biggest thing I wanted to do as a child was to be able to crack an egg with one hand at 5 years old, and with little hands, it was a hard thing to do. But the same thing. I loved food. I love the passion behind cooking and experimenting with foods and flavors and spices from all around the world. And that was great for a long time, but you start to realize, like you said, you don't even realize how you're feeling. You become
you habituate to whatever is going on, whatever your day-to-day is becomes
so
normal.
It's a process. It is absolutely a spiral effect of adding more and more nutrition to your daily life. Now, does that mean that you go in all in on the first day? Probably not. But you should constantly try to make changes. So what I'd like to talk about today is some of those changes, because this is what we talk about with not just the adults, but with the children, because they're like sponges. They'll soak up anything that you have to offer them, and especially if there's food involved, because they get to taste it.
Well, and I think very importantly with that, you start to form habits at whatever age. And the earlier you can start developing good habits and we have an issue in this country. One of my big things is just empty calories, the refined sugar that is in so much. And that absolutely helped us as a culture, as a society grow. But now we're at a stage where, we're not calorie deficit. We have this overabundance of calories. People are drinking thousands of calories a day of Coca-Cola or whatever soft drink, or
Non-nutrient
just
drink.
just stuff that is just loaded with calories but no nutrition outside of that.
Right.
And one thing people don't realize, your taste buds, like all the cells of your body, are constantly regenerating, right? It takes somewhere between 14 and 20 days for your taste buds to totally be replaced. And if you're used to this level of sweetness or saltiness or umami, whatever your thing is, give it 2 or 3 weeks, you will start with a brand new palate.
Yeah, it's a 21-day rule.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can keep switching that 21 days and become more and more disciplined. That's the one thing I learned. I mean, I love discipline. You know, you do too. I know you in many different ways. He's great. He works out like crazy. but the discipline is where it's at. So once you think you've gotten it down pat, learn more.
Yes. Well, and I sorry to cut you off, but I think so much of discipline is just like you alluded to before. You know, a lot of times, and I've always had this problem. I'm very passionate, and I tend to have one speed, and it's 100%. And that's one of the best ways to fail at something: to jump all in,
Yeah.
to burn yourself out,
Right.
to exhaust yourself,
Right.
and then at some point throw your hands up. And
Yeah.
one of my favorite movies ever is What About Bob? Bill Murray movie, Richard Dreyfuss. And Richard Dreyfuss, a psychiatrist in that, writes a book called Baby Steps.
Yeah.
It's about baby steps.
It is.
It is making little changes every day. So little that you won't even notice them that day. And they're going to be so easy. And so much of what we do day to day in pretty much every facet of life is just a continuation of what was going on before. And usually, I mean, that can be in a positive direction or it can be in a negative direction.
Sure, absolutely.
And just taking those positive steps every day, just little tiny things, add up. After a month, after a year, I lost 130, 140 pounds, and I've lost 50, 75 pounds more than 10 times.
And it's not
always
just,
put it back on.
it's not even just the weight. It's the fact that you're you boost your self confidence, obviously, but you're using food as medicine, and that's the big difference. You're using food as a medicinal thing, so that it works in your body, extracts, moves on, and you're ready for the next meal. That kind of thing. So why don't you make us something that will help the general audience here?
Okay, so. What I'm going to do today is, and I've already pre-made a few dips, but it's basically just going to be using some yogurt, which is very good, and basically a one-to-one replacement for something like sour cream, even cream or creme fraiche, Mexican crema, things like that. So what I have here, this is a little tzatziki sauce, a Greek cucumber dip. Traditionally made with yogurt, with Greek yogurt. That's the one here that's going to be kind of most traditional.
And I'll say this about Greek yogurt. One of the reasons why I like it so much, first of all, it's thicker.
Yes.
As is Lebny. I don't know if you know Lebny, but we've
talked about it a little before, but I've never actually had it.
It's an incredible yogurt. It's very, very thick. But when the thicker they are, the more they have been fermented. And so essentially what you're doing is you're extracting all the whey from the curds. The curds are the hard part. And the hard part is what stays, but it becomes has antioxidants and prebiotics.
Yes.
So that's the main thing.
And those probiotics, that's one of the big things. Gut health. So I'm actually studying medicine right now, and one of the things that we are just starting to get a real concept on is how important your microbiome is. You literally have more organisms inside of you than known stars in the universe.
Wow.
Trillions of little bugs inside of you that are processing most of your vitamins. The vitamins they don't come directly from food. They come from the food. The things living inside of you make these. And one of the problems people can have is when that, environment inside of you gets out of whack.
Yeah.
And what you find in things like fermented cabbages, the kimchis and sauerkrauts, yogurts, generally fermented foods, they are these positive bacteria that really help maintain the whole homeostasis, the well-being of you. And
we can't eat enough of it.
No, and Greek yogurt being one of those things in particular. So the main difference between Greek yogurt and regular store yogurt is it just has less whey in it.
Right.
They drain some of the whey out, which means it has a much higher protein content, sometimes a little bit more sugar. I always go with a full fat version because one thing that really kind of changed my entire mindset is when I realized that there's only 3 things that you get calories from that aren't considered poisons. It's either protein, it's carbohydrates, and it's fat. And I grew up in, you know, the early 90s era when it was everything had to be low fat, no fat, low fat, get all the fat out of there. Well, what happens when you do that, when you replace the fat from a dish, you have to put in sugar or it is just unpalatable.
And also, we end up eating more of it.
Yes.
Mentally, you're never satisfied.
Well, fat is also, the reason I love fat and protein is they are very satiating. They fill you up and it takes your body a lot longer to process them versus carbohydrates. And everybody, I feel like, has had this experience. With me, it's Chinese food, but Italian food sometimes does this, where you eat till you feel like you're about to explode.
Right.
And an hour later, 90 minutes later, you're hungry again. You're still stuffed, but you're hungry again. But if that meal after a steak dinner with some nice veggies, you don't feel that way. You're satisfied the whole rest of the night.
Sure.
And that's because your body takes longer to break down proteins and to break down fats, and they just tend to fill you up more. They stay in your stomach a little longer.
So show us this this recipe.
Okay. So what I'm going to do here is just make a quick little ranch dressing with yogurt instead of what you would normally use, either milk or sour cream or buttermilk. So the yogurt's not only going to give us the probiotics that we talked about, but it has a much, much higher protein content. And it's got a beautiful creamy texture. And it's really as simple as, let me actually read the directions on this one. I think it's 1 cup. The other replacement that yogurt is excellent for is for mayonnaise. And
yes,
mayonnaise is one of those, it's got excellent culinary purposes, but people don't realize real mayonnaise has 2 or 3 ingredients. It's egg yolk and it's oil. It's emulsifier and oil.
And unfortunately, a lot of times it's soybean oil, which is not the best oil for you.
Yeah, I am. It's hard to not.
I mean, we're starting to get
soy everywhere.
Nitpicky here, but we are nitpicky, and so everything we eat becomes important. You know, I like the fact that you know, food can be such a medicine. But you have to continually research it. You know, fortunately, my better half, Lisa, is really good at researching all this information, as well as some friends of mine, and so I do what they say, and it actually works really well.
Yes.
But food is absolutely medicine. What is the difference here between the tzatziki and the other dips? That
Okay, so, and by the way, that was as quick as. That's as long as it takes to make a ranch dressing. And once you put this on the salad, this is going to taste just like the stuff you buy at the store, which is also loaded with soybean oil and things to keep it shelf stable. Yeah. Yes. And there's generally nothing good for you in it versus this yogurt is actually excellent for you all around. Yeah. Maybe one of the best things you can have for breakfast is some yogurt like this with some berries in it.
One of the things that we like to do with our both our children and the veterans that we serve is that we like to put out a bowl of these types of dips and some carrots, and they think that they're eating you know, potato chip dip or French onion dip, and then they find out that it's yogurt and they're like, what? Yep. But they love it, and they say, well, see, it can taste good. Health can taste good.
Yep. Well, and so much stuff. I'm a big fan of trying things twice, because the first time you have something, a lot of times, whatever your perceptions going into it is, totally color your experience with it. Sure. So if you go into something knowing you're not going to like it, but you force yourself to try it, you're probably not going to like it. But if you have it again, maybe you do. So there's our ranch dressing. This one's just a little green onion dressing. It's 5 or 6 ingredients. It's the yogurt. It's some chopped up scallions or chives, whatever green onions you like, dehydrated onion, garlic powder, a little bit of glutamate. Super easy. And then this one is a creamy Italian dressing. Some Italian seasoning, some red pepper flake, again, garlic powder and onion powder, which I put into almost everything I make. It's hard to eat something without garlic or onion in it in general, because they're such good flavor bases.
And if it's real garlic, it's really good for you.
Absolutely.
So here, you know, here's
all of these take about the same amount of time.
Yeah, it didn't take any time.
5, 6, 10 minutes max if you had to slice up some cucumbers.
Yeah, so that's the best part. And you know, obviously they're great for game days, and I find myself snacking on them all the time. You go a little bit further, and you want to buy organic vegetables. You're allowing even more, you know, a better health to your overall body and blood flow. We're going to take a break. But before we do, I want to thank Chef Blake for bringing this these recipes out. He's got a couple more for you. And a big thank you to William G. McGowan Charitable Fund, who supports and serves, helps us support and serve our students up in Kansas City. They understand the importance of education and the importance of nutrition. So thank you very much. We'll be right back.